Welcome to another episode of TRVC, the Turkish VC Podcast. I'm very excited today to have Dilek Dayınlarlı, GP ScaleX Ventures, as our guest today. ScaleX is one of the first funds in Turkey to focus on global enterprise software startups. Welcome, Dilek.
Thank you for having me, Yunus. We made it at the end.
Yes, we were scheduling.
More trials.
Finally, we're here, so super to have you. Maybe we just kick it off with, how did you get into venture? I know you were in telecoms before, like me. So interested to hear kind of your path into venture.
It's a very long story. I'll keep it short. But I found myself in venture. I got into venture almost 12 years ago at 212. I know you also hosted Ali Karabey. But before that, I'm an engineer. Went to US to get my MBA. And during that time, I founded a business. I said, making money is easy, but finding your passion and making money is not. So it's been like a soul searching for the next decade, let's say, in corporate telco, management consultancy, but I got into Groupon when it was like flying. I loved it. My job was building those systems, making the company smarter, like building CRM systems, using Hadoop and making better campaigns, or even just like simple meeting agenda settings. I loved it. The reason was like there were always a problem and it was so dynamic. So I said, I need to be in a startup world. And I got into 212. It was around 2012. The first thing that I said, how am I going to learn how to be a venture capitalist? Because it was just like I was working at the first venture capital firm and I heard a program called Kauffman Fellowship in Bay Area. We can call it like YC of the VC world at the end of the day. You go there every couple months, you land into an ecosystem that you are going to learn and connect. Long story short, Kauffman changed whole my view about venture investing. And my first investment as a venture capitalist when I was at 212 was Iyzico. It was really sophisticated picking. The reason was in US, fintech was growing, payment companies. I came to Turkey, I talked to all the founders, I was deal sourcing that time. It was so funny actually. I was doing those deal meetings in Starbucks back to back. I was meeting a lot of founders and I met Barbaros and Tahsin that time and I was like blown away. So many other VCs said it was really expensive, the valuation was high, but we were able to convince them with Numan and we convinced them and we made the deal. But then I did another deal, Visera and Insider. I learned a lot during that process. If you come to me and tell me what Insider is doing, the way I saw it at the first time, like they were bringing coupons on Facebook. It was a tiny company. They grew into a Series A size company when we made the investment at 212. But long story short, seeing them going global, just from the Excel file, picking which market to go now, like serving in 25 countries is a phenomenal journey. So you saw the founder potential there with Insider? Hande was, I've seen so many amazing founders, but they were so progressive. I remember they invited me to one of their management meetings in the middle of the night. It was like, they were starting at 8 p.m. And they were discussing about a problem which I don't want to disclose now, but they were literally fighting in a good way. Their ideas were fighting and they were bringing experts to solve that problem. It was phenomenal for me to see them. And also during my due diligence call with Serhat, one of the other co-founders, he is also the CRO now. He was on the top of tuk-tuk in Jakarta. I'm like, what kind of founders these are? Like they would make you to bet on them for sure. Now they are doing phenomenal. But my view I wanted to do something different. Like seeing Silicon Valley kind of changed my mind, as I told you before. The talent was everywhere. I think we had amazing founders here, but we were lacking the access to the more capital, know-how, and network. So I said, how can I change it? So I said, I want to bet on the companies like Insider, high IP, enterprise that want to go global from day one. And everybody thought I was crazy at that time. But my first angel investment, or I worked with them as an active chairwoman, is Picus Security. Mm-hmm. They were making less than 100K, cybersecurity company. their category called breach and attack simulation. We were flying to London and US, going to RSA. Volkan was talking to people. People had no clue what breach and attack simulation was. But now they are one of the top players at Gartner, more than 10 countries.
So what was the point at which you decided to create your own fund?
It was like I wanted to bet on global companies. I also believed it's not just the money. If you want to go global, like Israeli ecosystem that we were just discussing with you, they were building back home, but they were doing their go-to-market in US. Why? More than 50% of enterprise software spending is happening in US.
It's the market.
So maybe it's going to change in the next 10 years. We will see. But for sure, it's the biggest market that you can learn from. It's where the capitalist customer's talent is. So how do you lend into that market? And we have so many amazing engineering talent here. So that was the idea. And I wanted to be hands-on in the company so I could build that global growth playbooks or recipes, let's say. So I had like 7 to 8 angel investments. Another one is DataRow. Again, amazing founders, Can and Eren. They sold their company to AWS. Their tool has been used by so many developers. So it kind of gave more confidence that we can do it more and more again. Now we see it's like obvious. So many founders are growing in US or in global markets now. But long story short, along the way, I also created learning or training masterclass series with Harvard professors and founders who have done it. My founding venture partner, Berkay, he was building in Ankara. His company was OpsGenie, developed dev tool, and selling in 100 plus countries. I was like dragging him to the board meetings. Please come and talk to the founders. Like, how did you do it? So, and then we kind of started Berkay, me, and Shafak. That time was our intern. Now it's like after 7+ years, he's a phenomenal guy. He became a principal leading the deal flow. But also along the way, Alper helped me a lot. Thanks God they were there. We founded the fund around 2020, 2021. We are born into COVID, 30 million euro fund, crazy times. The thesis was bet on the high enterprise tech, take them to US. But along the way, we also learned there are so many amazing founders in the Bay Area which want to build their talent pool here, which we had a really strong foot with the engineering talent. So it became like dual talent change for us.
So you created a team. How was that? How did you convince them? How did you choose that you needed people to work with?
Wow, that's a tough question. But it was organic, I guess, because we had the same passion and vision. Like, there are amazing talent here who can create something much bigger, and how we can help them with the capital, know-how, and network we have in Bay Area or all around the world. So that was the vision from day one. So it came around that. And I was also lucky to get to know and connect with a lot of advisors and other operators along the way. Now we have more people around us. Just to give you an idea, Magdalena, who also introduced us, she founded 3 companies in Bay Area and then phenomenally successful as an entrepreneur, but also as an investor. She was the first investor in Salesforce. So she was also giving us a lot of wisdom to how to build a team, also connecting us with a lot of great people like yourself. So that kind of helped, like it created its own network or team. Also, I was so passionate about the fellowship program because of Shafak, who was our first fellow intern, who became a major team. I mean, I can call him as a co-founder now. I really cared about fellowship program, and I think we trained a lot of people out of that program, and also they are working in so many great other firms too now. That also gave us a lot of boost with the young talent.
There is the idea of solo GP venture funds. Is that something you ever considered, or you decided early on that you wanted to build a team?
I mean, they call me a solo GP too, because as a managing partner, but then we are surrounded by really strong operators and founders, let's say, or venture partners who sit at the board, who help for the deal flow and so on.
Right.
But also, I really care about the value add side. That's why we have head of talent in London, phenomenal talent who's helping us for sourcing, helping our founders, also associate in New York. So we have offices in London and New York too.
Super. Some of the companies you mentioned are dev tools space. And knowing Berkay's story, there was really a great go-to-market strategy there with these dev tools companies where you don't necessarily need a huge B2B sales force on the ground in the US because you're providing something of value to developers and they find you, they start using it, and then that goes up into a enterprise sales organically. Is that still a model that you see as working well for Turkish startups? And just your view on go-to-market strategies? Because that's something that I hear a lot, and I've seen myself also, is Turkish startups that we're talking about there's great technical talent, but the kind of depth of in the talent pool here of knowledge around marketing, messaging, building a sales team abroad is the ecosystem is new and has less of that kind of built in. And so go-to-market is an interesting subject.
Yeah, I think it's not just for the Turkish founders, but it's a challenge for a lot of people because enterprise sales requires muscles. It requires a lot of hand-holding. You need SOC just to serve as enterprise, which requires at least 6 months and a lot of work. So definitely yes, but it's changing for the dev tools also. We know Lovable, Cursor, what's going on in there. Like they are all bottom-up product-led companies making, Cursor is making more than 300 million, which is just disclosed. But it's getting harder for dev tools. You need an enterprise sales for sure. I think the problem is because there is so much competition for the attention of developers. So many people are trying to sell them something. So definitely it's a challenging place. And when I was in Bay Area like 2 weeks ago, I was talking to a couple friends, Indian mafia, Turkish mafia, and like Ukrainian mafia. We are on the same table. The winners were like, founder was literally going and closing the deal on the table because you need handshake or like eye-to-eye contact and talk to the customer. Otherwise, they are bombarding with a lot of messages. So I think it's changing for everyone. It's not a challenge just for us, but good founders are figuring it out. Also, I mean, as a team, we are trying to help them out. Just to give you an example, we were also discussing again for a cybersecurity companies, which I really believe in. After Picus, Resmo acquired by JumpCloud, General Atlantic company, which also came to Turkey during that time, met with Insider, and the big deal happened. So it's a really good circle happening now, but also Conducto. It was a tiny company out of Istanbul. Cenk and Can, phenomenal founders. We helped them to go to US. We are spending so much time on how we can help them and lend there. We brought MongoDB's ex-head of growth, Andreas, German-American guy, phenomenal guy. We brought angel investors who have done it before so they can lend them into the networks. Or we try to introduce them to the lighthouse customers we call. When you get those lighthouse customers, they bring more customers. Like top brands, they got the most valuable company as a customer now. So I think it takes time, but our companies, I mean, not just our portfolio companies, but Turkish founders are building those know-hows and also sharing with each other. Now they are one of the category leaders in their space in application security orchestration, for example. And more than 70% of the revenue is coming out of Turkey.
Outside of Turkey.
Yes.
We're talking about value adds. You just gave some great examples. I know you also have a program where you share the carry with your founders to enable value add among your portfolio companies. Actually,
2 different ones. The reason was, I mean, seeing Silicon Valley, also not just Silicon Valley, the successful companies, they have an ecosystem to launch in. They get a support from that community. That really matters. So we said how we can build that, like that know-how sharing, not just us helping the founders. It's impossible, by the way. So my biggest learning from Fund 1, I mean, Berkay, Alper, phenomenal people, phenomenal advisors, but you need a village to help your portfolio. So how you can bring those people? It's like the founders who have done it like 18 months ago, 24 months ago, who can share it with you. Also experienced founders who have been there, who have the wisdom. So we said how we can bring that with 2 things. One, we said we are going to share our carry. 10% of our carry is shared with our portfolio. We said, if you win, you will win together. We wanted to make them to share more. But on the other side, we brought in unicorn founders who have done it like insider founders are helping our founders on like tactical level. It's not just talking at a high level conference. It's like, how do you convince or close the deal, literally? So we created those two programs, Founder Collective and also Founders Partner Program, where we share the carry.
I like asking about motivation because you do see a lot of people going into venture have a deeper motivation than just, I wanted to make money. You mentioned you saw a great technical talent and you saw a need for access to capital. The ecosystem has evolved. There's a lot more capital now. It's still not enough. I mean, how do you see that that's evolved? You were talking about this ecosystem and village to help founders. Actually, in one way, having more funds means more support. Actually, you can have co-invest and so forth. On the other hand, do you see that there is more competition now?
Definitely more competition. When I first got into venture, I was the only one looking at the deals. No other term sheets on the table. But it's good. It makes you better. You do something new, people copycat you, or they do, you learn from them. It's like an ecosystem that feeds each other. It's good that your level goes up. So it's good for the founders, definitely. But I think there are still less money than there should be, for sure.
And are you now raising a fund too yet?
Yes, we are just working on it, preparing our LPA and working on the closing, and also already did 2 investments from Fund 2.
Is it similar strategy size, LP base?
Yes, definitely. I think it's similar. Definitely going deeper with our thesis, help founders from here to go global, mainly US, or US to here for their talent pool. But what we learn, as I said, is not just one person who can help. We are bringing more operators who have done it, for sure. On the LP base, something unique happened. Now, at the Fund 1, it was mostly successful founders who have done it. By the way, it also shows how it's affecting the ecosystem. Like exited founders feed it into one of the funds and created that fund. Now we both have those founders, but we also have successful founders and VC funds from Australia to US, Germany, Netherlands, Dubai, Denmark, and one of the biggest, the most valuable companies CEO from Europe. So by design, we wanted to bring people from global markets who can give us access to those markets. So
it's super cool because I've heard a lot of, the progression of Turkish VCs kind of from local, maybe family offices. So already a little bit different from what you were saying because your first fund was more focused on actually exited founders, local exits. And then what I've heard from other funds is then going second fund, third fund going to institutional investors abroad, but you're talking actually about exited founders, foreign exited founders. So that's different and super cool.
Turkish and foreign exited founders. And why I think there's a huge trend going on. I was talking to a really experienced fund of fund LP 2 weeks ago. I asked him, and he confirmed our thinking. I asked him, where would you bet? He said, funds less than 50 million. Why? Because when you invest in companies, you have to make it successful. That's number one. But also your success chance goes higher. And also you have a room for pro rata for LPs. What I want to do is like with the core fund, find those companies and the winners can be co-invested by your LP base.
So the fund is small enough that when you have follow-on rounds, you don't even have necessarily enough to fill your whole pro rata from the fund, and then LPs get a chance to
we do that
to follow on, and
they love it. That's why LP. I think they love for 2 reasons. That's what I'm hearing. That's number one. You get a strong ownership in the companies that you invest in because they believe in your help or value add, which is gonna give strong pro rata for the follow-on rounds. But the second one is if we wanted to hire a team like you to help our portfolio, we wouldn't be able to because we are bringing such a deep experience, operational experience with our operators.
Do you see also more interest from European and Gulf, Middle Eastern funds coming into the Turkish market also?
Definitely, yes. I think they are in and out, to be honest. But coming back to our focus area, last 6 investments are all in Bay Area, and I'm co-investing with raise capitals and A16Zs, 8 VCs. So the playing field that I see is a bit different than here, but I definitely see so many like Eastern European VC funds when I invest in Turkey coming and visiting us, or Middle Eastern VCs coming and visiting us. Because I think gaming, we are a powerhouse for sure. Fintech, getting a lot of attention. And also there are going to be much more bigger categories coming up.
Maybe cybersecurity.
Cyber defense. We are very, very well known for defense. I think being Turk and defense tech is really credible at the market now.
Is that a venturable sector?
Why not? If you are doing the right bets, why not? That market is definitely going to grow with two things. One is there's going to be increase at the spending, but also in the geopolitical environment. We all know what's going on all around the world. But also smart people used to go to work for like government-owned entities. Now, not just Turkey-based, but all around the world, they want to do it independently, which is going to create a mushroom of startups in defense tech or space tech. I love deep tech mostly.
Companies that start out in the Turkish market, the market can be so difficult, and especially for something like deep tech, it takes a long time sometimes to get traction. Whereas there's a view that if a startup hasn't gotten traction within a few years, that's a bad sign. Do you see a difference there, that you have to be a little bit more, see it as a positive sign maybe of the founders, tenacity?
So I'll go to basics. It depends what deep tech means for both of us. Because everybody thinks something different when we say deep tech. When I say deep tech, it's more high engineering problems and and it depends on the problem they are working on. Just to give you an example, one of our portfolio company, Atlas Robotics, they are doing full autonomous robots. Carnegie Mellon PhD, two brothers. They have built the product here. They started 18 months ago. First prototype, first product. They launched 2 robots at customer here, because it was a logistics supply chain solution or warehouse automation solution, to be more specific. That's one of the biggest success story that company has now. And we got investment from US, and YC co-founders also invested, and also really strong people in US want to invest now because we are also expanding in US. So just the way that I think is we have amazing potential customers here. We can co-develop the product, get access to capital in US, and maybe know how Carnegie Mellon is top school for the robotics at the end of the day. So it's not just one local thing now. Like, what are you bringing to the table to solve that specific problem matters more than giving you just one answer, to be honest. Or another company we have, a founder, phenomenal young founder. I admire him a lot, working on quantum. He had the first customer here again, developed together. Now he's selling in Japan, getting like a big enterprise customers and customers in US too. So like from Japan to US, but first starting here where he's really strong with the community, get the real feedback from good customers. Why not?
Which company was that? The quantum?
Icosa.
I love all these examples, by the way. Not all of the guests on the show give so many examples, and it's actually what's most exciting. So thanks for that. What's something that you see that other people haven't caught on to yet?
I'm not going to tell that here.
Okay. All right, I tried.
I would.
Or you can give misinformation. No. That's kind of the secret sauce, right? So
yes.
All right. What's something that you've changed your mind about recently?
When I first started, I started with a syndicate. I call it Fund Zero. When we were building the fund, we thought it was a long-term thing. But now I realize it's a really long-term game. I mean, as a venture capitalist, it's not just 10 years, 20 years, maybe more. It takes really long time to build that successful firm, because it's not just Fund 1, Fund 2, it's like Fund 3, Fund 4. how you are going to transform your company with those cycles too. So what I changed, you have to be really adaptive to the economic environment. And you need to always re-evaluate yourself and find where the good founders are coming from. So I thought it was a really dynamic sector, but it's way more dynamic than I thought.
So you're constantly having to kind of rethink where you get your deal flow from, where you...
So actually there's a book that kind of really affected my thinking. It's Superforecasting. It's a phenomenal book about forecasting and our business. It's talking about a research done with the super forecasters, with people who are at the top line forecasts. And their common points were, first of all, the maximum every 3 months, they reevaluated themselves. I think it should be every month, by the way. But also, they were okay to change their minds. So my job, as a venture capitalist, I should evaluate what's happening, make a decision, make my bets. But in 3 months, I should be able to reevaluate and change my mind depending on the signals that I get. So
have strong convictions loosely held.
Yeah, I definitely have strong convictions, but you have to reevaluate your conviction
to change them. That's super. You were talking about examples. Can you tell us about your most recent investment that's been publicly disclosed?
I'm not going to give a name, but I want to talk about this because we also mentioned it's a long-term game. In the new fund, as I mentioned, we have done 2 deals, and one of them, one of the founders used to be my intern way back ago. I never thought I would invest in my intern, by the way. Really smart guy. I admired him, but I didn't thought he would get into a space that I would invest. And now they are doing phenomenally. But it's shocking for me. This is a really, really long-term play for both sides, for founders and leaders of their companies and for VC side.
But it also points to the network effect of the ecosystem that
yes,
people gain experience at startups or at funds. It is more rare. It's one of the first examples I've heard of that, but it makes sense also. And then go on to do other things.
Actually, I'm also a guest lecturer at Stanford. We do a lot of research in Mexico, Latam, emerging ecosystems, let's say. And I was asking so many other friends, VC friends in other emerging markets, what I learned from them, the spillover effect, which I've been talking a lot. When you have your first generation, second generation of success stories, they give birth to a lot of other startups, like Peak Games gave birth to 80 other gaming companies, or Insider giving birth to a lot of other companies now. That creates an inflection point. Why? Because with that learning, and hopefully with the angel tickets of those founders, you have a stronger cohort of entrepreneurs coming into market. So I'm really bullish. And I think Turkish ecosystem in a really big inflection point now.
Yeah, actually, if you think about it, they talk about the PayPal mafia, a similar kind of spillover effect with PayPal. I mean, we think of the US venture ecosystem as going back to the 70s with Fairchild Semiconductor and all that, which it does. But actually, if you think about it, the recent explosion has a lot to do with that time in the end of the 90s, 2000s, where then you had some big spillover effect. So that's actually quite positive for more newer ecosystems like the Turkish ecosystem that we're not that far behind, actually. We're having those inflection points now. That's a really good point. Is there a memorable first meeting with a founder that comes to mind?
So many. There are so many. But there are 2 teams that I said I want to invest at the first meeting. They tell me I'm a slow decision maker. I love taking my time because it's a 10-year partnership along the way. So I want to see how they execute and so on. But there are 2 teams that I've done it. And one of them is recently. I was going to go to US for an event that we had. And Shafak told me, Dilek, you have to talk to them. I'm like, are you kidding me? What am I going to do? I have a flight in the morning. He said, can you do that at 7 a.m.? I said, okay, if you want that, I'll do it. And it was a phenomenal meeting. I said, I'm going to invest. So they were so bright, so dedicated, so smart. And before the call, we do our homework. We got to work on the market and so on, and also do the reference checks. And whole list of references that I got, they were so positive for both founders. So anyway, I'm not able to give the names because we didn't disclose that investment yet, but two of them, they are phenomenal founders. Really impressed me. Really strong.
Worth the 7 a.m.
Worth the 7
meeting.
a.m. and first meeting decision.
This is going to be, hopefully it will be a long series. So the target audience will shape, but I see the audience as two sides. One, people are interested in the Turkish ecosystem, and then also people starting venture funds. Do you have any takeaways from your experience, Fund 1? Things you learned along the way, any things you would have done differently, or tips for emerging VCs in terms of fundraising?
It's all about cycles in VC and which vintage you are coming in. You don't know if that vintage is good or not, but you should be aware of it and adapt to that cycle or vintage for sure. That would be my wisdom to my early emerging VC self.
And now we're kind of in a difficult time for fundraising, actually, right?
Yes, definitely. I mean, last year, Magnificent Seven made almost 50%. And with the interest environment, everybody wanted to be liquid. And we are investing in 10-year locked, illiquid asset class at the end of the day. How you are going to create alpha out of this asset class becomes harder, but you have to. So you also have to change your strategy on that side. Sometimes
that creates some of the best vintages, actually, when it's difficult to raise money. The funds that do raise money
because you don't have that much competition, so the valuation doesn't go up. Entry valuation matters for the VCs for sure.
Is there a shout out you'd like to make to somebody in the industry, startup or LP or somebody you've worked with?
So many. It would take at the end, all the names coming through.
Rolling credits.
But I could definitely thank to the team. I mean, Shafak, Berkay, Alper, but also two special people. I mean, all our advisors, operators, there are so many people who have a big impact to build this, but two people kind of made me to build the fund. One was Magdalena. She's like, what are you doing, Dilek? Stop angel investing, do a fund. She kind of pushed me. But also Melih Ödemiş, one of the founders of Yemek Sepeti, phenomenal guy. He was like, why? This is my commitment to you. He's my first LP commitment to the fund. This is my commitment to you. You should do a fund. You will do it.
That's great.
I think they were both so important along the way to take that big leap to build a fund, because it's a serious thing. You have your LPs, compliance, reporting. You do something really serious. So I want to thank them a lot, but also definitely the team.
That's kind of all the questions I had prepared.
I want to ask you.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the VC industry in Turkey?
It's really grown. I had the same motivation that you had. So coming from the entrepreneurship side, seeing just the lack of capital, it's come a long way since then. A lot of people talk about the fact that now the capital that there is mostly around very early stage.
Number one in Europe, by the way.
For early stage.
Number one, number of investment-wise at early stage.
And then there's kind of a gap. Some people talk about Series A. Some people actually talk, Yunus Çelebiler was saying, actually there's a gap even a little bit earlier than that to get from early stage to scale towards Series A. There's even a gap there. Then there's also the legal framework. There's funds that are more internationally minded funds tend to be domiciled in the US or Europe. And then there's a recent local legal framework. And so I'm curious to watch how that's going to play out. I think it's good that there's been incentives to create, to bring more capital, but it is a little bit different. The local framework, maybe it'll change over time. We'll see how the local framework evolves. One thing I've learned about venture capital is it's interesting because you're investing in innovative startups that are constantly changing industries. But venture capital itself changes fairly slowly, because I think the main driver there is because the LPs are used to certain things and they're not so open to radical innovation, right? They're like, this is what I understand, standard whatever, 2 and 20 model. If you do something crazy, you're going to have difficulty attracting LPs. So there's a built-in kind of inertia there. And also maybe also because it works, right? I mean, it's a model that's been refined over time since the 70s in the US, and it works. And so I do see benefit in kind of bridging how it's being done in Silicon Valley and kind of trying to get the local, not just the legal framework, but also kind of the way the local VC funds or people entering the VC industry here are operating, to learn a bit more from, or see at least how it's done in Silicon Valley and Europe now as well, and kind of learn from that. It's evolving, and I think it's exciting to watch it evolve. And we were talking earlier about the ecosystem, how the Turkish startup ecosystem spans also Europe and Silicon Valley and the US. I mean, I think that's super important too. People have had experience in startups in the US who can then help Turkish startups with that experience, I think is important, and that's growing as well.
I think it's not just a local thing now. It's like it's a fabric of global network at the end of the day for all the successful founders. Because markets, even though now we have barriers, actually in tech, you don't have any barriers to reach out to customers. But also, did you read the Power Law about the US venture capital industry's history? That's a must read on. I mean, after reading that, I was like blown away. If anyone interested, that they should definitely read about that. It takes really long time to build an strong ecosystem.
And the venture mindset, Ilyas Strabuyev's,
yes,
I never get his last name right, Strabulayev. That's a super interesting book as well.
Contrarian bets and prepared minds.
Yeah.
Love the story of Sequoia knocking all the doors to find WhatsApp.
Right.
One of my friends, he's an early employee, I think number 7, the first design guy at WhatsApp. He was literally talking about that. So it's phenomenal how you should be prepared to find that founder.
Right. One of the points that Ilyas Strabulayev made on one of his LinkedIn posts was actually that if you look at the growth in the US stock exchange, and then look at how much of that growth comes from venture-backed companies, it actually makes up exactly the difference between the growth of the US stock exchange versus the European stock exchange. So US stock exchanges have been doing better, and the amount is pretty much attributable to venture-backed companies. So it's a really strong argument for saying that venture is a key driver for the economy. So I think that's exciting as well, that the Turkish venture ecosystem is developing, because it has big spillover effects for the economy, I believe.
Definitely. When I first started, when I was in telco, like if you would look at the public market or the most valuable companies in Turkey, you wouldn't see any tech companies.
Right.
Now, if you look at the top 10, almost half of it is like tech companies now, which is phenomenal. I mean, in US, it's obvious. S&P's 20% is just the Magnificent 7, NASDAQ's 30%. But in Turkey, in such a short time, like less than 10 years, the biggest companies became tech-based companies.
Very few local IPOs of tech companies, interestingly. That's maybe because of the rules around when you can go public in Turkey, but we'll see how that changes over time. Because
it's also, I think it's not just Turkey, all around the world. Everybody wanna go to somewhere that they are highly valued, which is usually US. I mean, Saudi is trying to build their own public market, I mean, for tech IPOs, but it's not easy. It takes time. So still US is the main place for the exit.
One other question, we were talking about motivation. How do you see impact? I kind of have the view that entrepreneurship is in and of itself positive impact, because by definition, to be a successful entrepreneur, you're solving a problem that somebody has. Do you see that as kind of, funding companies as a force for good, or is it something that doesn't really play into your equation?
So, I mean, there are impact definitions everywhere, but my impact, the personal impact definition as me, Berkay, and Shafak, when we talk, or Alper, there were two things. One was the wealth creation happened from tech. If you look at the history, it always came from the tech, whatever tech was that time. So that's our biggest give back to our community, how we can enable those founders to create wealth, not just to make money. That wealth creation is going to give a lot of resources to other people around them, and how you can enable that. They should give stock options whenever we invest. One of the first things we talk about is like, even put it as a rule in our term sheets or agreements, their stock option plans, because people who work on those can create wealth too. That's a big impact for an emerging market like ours at the end of the day. But also, if people read the Power Law book, the Fairchild history, it's coming from Fairchild's example, because they were like 7 + 1 = 8 scientists. Because they had equal stocks, they were able to create something much bigger than expected. So after that, all the investors wanted to give stock option. That's why, like, you create something bigger and create a bigger impact.
It helps grow the pie.
Yes, for everyone.
That's super interesting. I wanted to ask about that as well. It's great you expect the companies you invest in to give stock options. You're right. It's not as common. I mean, it's very common in Silicon Valley. It's not as common in other markets, for example, in Turkey. Is that something that's difficult to achieve? Are there legal difficulties with it in terms of or that's kind of solved now, or they set up the company as a U.S. entity and so it's not an issue, or are there cultural pushback against it or anything? Or?
I mean, for technically, if it's a Delaware C Corp, it's like easy and standard. In Turkey, still there are problems. Like, it's not easy, because even if you give one share, then they have a vote. But at the end of the day, they have some solutions, let's say, which is not the right solution for that. Hopefully it's going to be solved. But culturally, I don't see the problem. The vesting periods and everything, I think, settling, because the founders that we are betting are mostly global thinkers. So probably that's why our bias. And
probably on the flip side, actually, because it's not as common for employees of the company, what might be seen super positively that, wow, this company is giving us stock options.
Yes, definitely. But I think Yemek Sepeti made a big difference in Turkey with stock options. Even the tea lady was able to make money and buy a house. These stories goes around. So these are phenomenal things. Also, I mean, all of us, like in tech, when we tell what we are doing to our moms and families, they are like, hey kid, what are you doing? You should do a serious job. It helps to founders too, or the people who are going to work for startups. I think for me, stock options helps a lot. If we talk about those stock option stories more, so hopefully people can go work and not get complaints from the families. That matters. Family matters. My biggest learning. That's
a great place to end on, a little word of wisdom. We actually went well over our time. It just points out that it was such an exciting discussion. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. It was really nice.
Look forward to hearing about the success of Fund 2.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Turkish VC Podcast. My name is Yunus Çelebiler. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe and tell your friends. You can listen to more episodes wherever you find podcasts, on Spotify or YouTube, etc. Stay tuned for further episodes.